Everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, bark like a dog for me.
Where's the goodies?
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Where I'm leaving the house and I don't want to spoil it. You've probably seen it before, but I don't want to spoil it. But I sort of saying, I don't need anything. I don't need you. All that stuff came from my act. But largely the screenplay was developed by Michael Elias and Carl Gottlieb and myself, and we just kept working on it and working on it. Our goal was to have a laugh on every page. I hope you enjoy it, and here it is, The Jerk.
There we are. I'm not necessarily the jerk, but I'm the one that's just been introduced by Steve Martin here on Everything Old is New Again. Sans our friend David Cohen this week, but we have a special guest star and quite a number of stars here, if you will, that are joining us today. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a very fun afternoon with Michael Elias. We're also with Michael Weiner, Dr. Richard Richter, Dr. John Viviani, all who have been visitors to Everything Old is New Again in the past. We're just kind of celebrating 50 years of friendship and brotherhood together. And we've invited Michael Elias for certain reasons we'll discuss to join us and have some fun. Michael Elias, if you don't know, studied with Lee Strasberg, the Actors Studio, was in theater in New York City, and then in the 60s joined Frank Shaw and formed Elias and Shaw, a comedy team that did appear on The Tonight Show probably about 5 times or so. Also played clubs in New York City, and just had some fun during that time. Then they became and were approached by Hollywood, entrepreneurs, if you will, and they became writers. And Steve Martin wrote with Michael Elias, or in the same rooms, if you will, and they formed a friendship, if you will, and eventually Steve Martin, we'll talk about this, led the way with comedy shows in huge venue, and Michael Elias helped to bolster and to write some of that material. So also participated in The Jerk in 1979, and then Head of the Class, which I know many of you listeners remember, starring Howard Hesseman, was written and created by our guest Michael Elias. Michael, that's enough for now. Welcome to Everything Old is New Again.
Okay, yeah, enough.
We could go on and on, but right. I don't want to do that. I do want to just ask.
That's very sweet of you. Very sweet. Very sweet.
Thank you. You started your career in New York City. Now, this is interesting. As I guess you could say, studying acting with Uta Hagen and Lee Strasberg, who's kind of known for the method acting theory, if you will, and later on became a performer with respect to comedy. Before you got to comedy, you were on stage, I think, in New York City here and there. What was the career path? What was the goal when you started? And what did Uta Hagen give to you in terms of any gifts to lend you a starting point to where you were going to go from that point on?
I came to New York right after college to become an actor. I was lucky enough to get into the Living Theater and become a member of that company. They did The Connection, and I was in the Brig. At the same time, I was still always studying acting, always trying to get into a movie or a TV series. So as an actor, I was kind of in the world of off-Broadway, the La Mama, Judson Poets Theater, the Living Theater. It was a very exciting time. Teaching during the day because you couldn't earn a living being what I was doing. My weekly salary at the Living Theater was $15 a week. So I had a job as a teacher. And then I started studying improvisational comedy with Janet Coleman and David Dozer. And in those improvisation classes, I met Frank Shaw. And we would do improvisations together, and we were the funniest guys in the room. And he said to me, hey, why don't we do this professionally? We could be comedians. We could be a comedy team. And that was the era. There was the time of comedy teams, Stiller and Mira, Nichols and May. So we became one. And we started working, and we created an act improvisationally, and then we try to find places to perform. And we ended up doing nightclubs, and then we got a kind of good reputation, and we were hired to be the opening act for other, sometimes rock and roll groups. We were the opening act for the Turtles. We were the opening act for, at one point, Janice Ian, and at one point, Ed Ames. I don't know if it's familiar to you. He was, and he threw the tomahawk on the Carson show and hit the guy in the groin. Anyway, that's what we did. So we were the opening act, and we did some movies. We did The Night They Raided Minsky's, Elliot Gould. There was a Billy Friedkin picture, and we did the Carson show. And one night we were on the Carson show. A producer in Hollywood, Ernie Chambers, saw us, and he was a big producer. He'd done the Smothers Brothers, or anyway, he called us and said, "Who writes your material?" And we said, "We do." He said, "Well, would you like to come to Hollywood and be writers?" We said, "Yeah." And I said, "What about the act?" He said, "Not interested." So we went to Hollywood and started writing, and of course eventually gave up the act. We did a few shows when we came to LA. We did a week at the Troubadour. We did nightclubs, but basically the act was over, which was good. I mean, it was fine with me. We had it, and then we started doing little variety shows and bigger variety shows, and one of them was called the Pat Paulson. Remember him? Half a Comedy Hour, it was called. Bob Einstein was the head writer, and there was another young writer on the show named Steve Martin. A few things happened at the same time. I was starting to break up with Shaw. I became really good friends with Steve Martin, and he was a writer who wanted to become a comedian, and I was a comedian who wanted to become a writer, and we got this friendship, and I started writing material for him for his act, which was sort of just beginning then, and we would write together. And then Shaw and I went on. I think we did one more show, Glenn Campbell, and we wrote a movie, The Frisco Kid, and that's as far as I'm going to go at the moment. But that's my. I talked for a long time, but that was my history in Hollywood, kind of.
And I appreciate that. That gets us started and introduced right into Steve Martin. Now, my brother is here, and he's on a camera, but he's here, and I think he remembers, and I certainly went with David Cohen as well, who's not here, but co-host of the show, in 1978 to the Nassau Coliseum.
Ah.
Little did we know, this was, for me, my first concert. And I remember buying a T-shirt, and it had the face of Steve Martin on it with the arrow going through his head. Uh-huh. And I did not have any idea what to expect in a comedy show to begin with, no less something that turned out, from what I understand, to be a cornerstone in some ways of comedy and stand-up comedy, in that he sold out approximately, whatever it was, 18,000 people to watch his stand-up routine. And you had to have some pride to see that, but I don't know if you had the thought that would be the goal, so to speak, when you were involved with that. But tell us a little bit about your participation in that event. And I may cut you off because we only have another minute. We'll continue on the other side. But give a little introduction as to what participation you had in that. And do you agree that was a cornerstone of stand-up comedy?
Yeah, it was the first rock and roll audio comedian, in the sense that he was a comedian who performed before, as you said, 18,000 people. I was there that night. I traveled. I think Stevie Goodman was the opening act. He was famous for training in New Orleans. I would go and work with Steve. He had a place in Aspen, and I'd go there for the weekend, and we would write material for his act. And then I would go on tour with him. There wasn't much to do, but if something funny occurred, or if I saw something that we could, develop further together in the act, we would do it, rehearse it, and he would put it in. But those those huge venues came from him doing scores of small venues where he built an audience on college campuses, little comedy clubs, and so that by the time he, arrived, as including the Saturday Night Live shows, he could then book huge arenas.
And we'll stop there just for a moment. We'll pick up right after this when we get back talking more Steve Martin comedy and more with Michael Elias. Right here, Everything Old's New Again.
Although we're apart, you're part of my heart. And tonight...
So you're going to be in my class this fall, so tell me a little about yourself.
I want to teach the world to sing.
My primary interest is...
lunch.
To end racism, to end world hunger, to end illiteracy.
I'm not into sports.
Well, reading, that's not really a sport.
Taxidermy.
I really don't have a lot of time for this.
To be accepted as an Indian dude by these American honkies.
Howard Hessman is head of the class, premiering this fall.
Hey, guys, let's do lunch.
We're back here on Everything Old is New Again, joining Michael Elias.
Your channel.
And we'll try that again. We're here on Everything Old is New Again, joining Michael Elias, the creator of Head of the Class, wrote, I believe, 14 or 15 of those episodes, which we'll talk about in a moment. But before we do, we had cut off Mr. Elias talking about Steve Martin and his time as a stand-up comedian and selling out 18,000 seats, arenas, back in the late 70s. You were traveling with him too, I guess. So was he, I know he was building this audience as you described, but was he, and of course was on Saturday Night Live at the time, but was he in any way taken aback by the size and enthusiasm of these audiences, or was it something that at this point in time he was just on the top of his game and this was going to last for as long as it lasted and then move on to the next thing?
Yeah, I think the latter part is right. He built it, he enjoyed it, he conquered it and at the same, and it took its toll. I mean, traveling, touring it's hard. I mean, it's you live in a bus, and if you're lucky, you stop at a hotel, and no matter how big the size of the audience, no matter how enthusiastic, you still have to go out there and make them laugh. And he always did. One of the things that Steve did was really smart was he had a little short that Carl Gottlieb directed called The Absent-Minded Waiter. I think it was 10 minutes. It was Terry Garr, and he played this kind of screwed-up waiter, dropping stuff and everything. And the thing was, he would show that film first. As I said, it was like 10 minutes, and it was funny. So he was a comedian who came, and then he came out. As the film was ending, he would come out live. And it was great because he had solved the problem of every comedian, which is how do you come out and make them laugh, get your audience laughing? Well, he came out, they already were laughing, and the rest was much easier.
And they were already laughing at him, so to speak, as well, right?
Yeah, he had won them over, but he didn't have to come out and start from zero. He came out where they were already won over by this kind of almost guaranteed funny movie.
What a great idea. What a great idea. And a great show. I remember that to this day. Now, let's turn a little bit to Head of the Class. And you worked with Howard Hessman from WKRP in Cincinnati. He was a breakout star on that show. It was Johnny Fever. And now you're creating a show. Do you have the opportunity, or did you, when you created the show, to cast it or have a say in the casting? Or was that how it began?
Absolutely.
So why would you select him? Let's get a little bit into that, because I think he did a great job.
We needed an actor who we needed somebody who could play a guy who was kind of counterculture, who was, he wasn't a hippie, but he was a guy who was an off-Broadway actor and director who was a substitute teacher. He, and came into this class, of really smart kids and had to win them over. So you needed a guy who was kind of, could be serious, but who was also kind of cool and kind of hip.
And there it was. It was perfect.
No question about it. No question
about it. So
he was a natural. There was no, I don't think, I don't know who came up with him. I hope it was me, but it probably wasn't. It doesn't matter. But as soon as the name, everybody said like, yeah, obviously, that's it.
So let's talk a little bit about then going one step beyond and now writing comedy for a sitcom or writing comedy in general. I know I'm going to play a little bit of a clip here very quick and see if this will lend you into a smidge of a discussion about your mentors or some of your mentors in that regard. Let's just listen to this real quick.
Don't make a move. This is a stick-up. What? You heard me. Mister, put down that gun. Shut up. Now, come on. Your money or your life? Look, bud. I said your money or your life. I'm thinking it over.
There you go, Jack Benny, the old joke, "Money of Your Life," right? Written by Belzer and Perrin, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a smidge about mentorship and how important or not it is and was in your profession or just in general.
Well, I worked with Sam and George on that first show, Belzer and Perrin. They were hysterical, and they were really. I mean, they were giants in the sense because they came, they wrote for Benny and they wrote that, Your Money or Your Life. But I would say that mentors, I would define mentors as people you actually work with or for. I'm not sure I got a lot of mentorship from Belzer and Perrin. I certainly got a lot of fun and I enjoyed being with them. And they were really interesting guys. Belzer was like a rock rib Republican, came to work every day in a suit and tie. And Perrin was an inveterate gambler. And I remember when we had to go to Las Vegas to see an act, they said they made him empty his pockets so he didn't have any money. Otherwise he would gamble. Anyway, I'll skip. And they were fun to be around. But my real mentor in the sense of working and learning how to write comedy and learning how to write sitcoms was Ed Weinberger, who produced and wrote The Cosby Show for years, and then Taxi, and a lot of shows. And he was a guy who really, we got a job. We worked for him on the first Bill Cosby sitcom. And I would say he was really important in my education as a mentor. Ernie Chambers was also who produced that show that Sam and George were on. You learn to write from other writers. But my heroes, my comedy heroes were I would say number one was Lenny Bruce. And that was my, the guy I just found the funniest and the most interesting of all. And then, of course, I like Nichols and May. But that's...
How about back in the day? Did you ever see Gene Shepard down in the Village on the radio?
I would listen to him on the radio. I think it was on the radio more.
Yes, he would tell a story. I'm wondering if that had... we all take all of the different experiences we have and compile them, and then you tell me when you're writing a comedy, you take a germ of the truth, and then what? Do you expand upon it to the nth degree and to make it funny?
Yeah, that's a good definition. I mean, I try to keep comedy. I like comedy. It's based on reality and character. I'm not like. It's interesting about Cosby. You couldn't write jokes for him because he never something had a punchline, whereas you could for Dick Van Dyke. You could for sitcoms or comedians, or All in the Family. You could write a joke, or that is to say something that had a punchline. But you couldn't do it for Cosby because he never stuck to exactly the line. So you had to make a situation for Cosby and allow him to exploit it. So, and then he did it brilliantly, improvisationally, and that was the deal. But if you wanted to, you could not write a line for Cosby where it had to end with, and then I hit him with a Buick. He would make it his own.
Right, the timing was never there. I guess it wouldn't work for him.
No, he never stuck. I mean, he read the lines, but he just wouldn't do it. Which was okay.
I wonder if that's similar. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, you had to have a situation. You had to have Cosby in trouble, and then give him a roadmap to get out of it. I mean,
sounds similar to like Jackie Gleason. They always say he didn't want to rehearse that Honeymooners at all, and it seems like he ad-libbed. He didn't always come up with the punchline, although he did do punchlines for sure.
Yeah.
But it was more like you say, the situational thing, and how is this mind going to get out of it, and the eyes and the body work and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want to turn for a moment. Last time you were on the show, you had written a novel called You Can Go Home Now, which was a psychological thriller featuring a female cop on the hunt for a killer. And I'll tell you, it was a great read. I had enjoyed it, and I'm wondering if you have any plans, because there's so much variety in your life. The next thing is, are you going to produce or think about doing anything either with that book or any other books?
Well, this book is right now. It's been optioned by and is in development to be a series. I'm not involved. People who know how to do dramatic series much better than I do are working on it, and stay tuned. That's all I can say. But yeah, it's in development for a series, and writing another one, actually two. I finished one, which is called Bender Sees the Elephant, and it's about I guess it's my fictional autobiography of my years in Hollywood, or it's a writer in Hollywood in the 70s and 80s, which was an interesting time. Rise of CAA, Ovitz, Vietnam War, politics. So it follows the kind of the adventures of a writer in Hollywood in those times. And
I'm going to keep an eye out for that, and we're going to come back and follow up with what the next project is. Right after this, Everything Old is New Again with Michael Elias.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again. My name is Nicholas Meyer. I am the writer-director of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and several Sherlock Holmes novels, including the forthcoming The Adventure of the Peculiar Protocols.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. We're here with friends and friends and friends. We've got friends for 50 years. Dr. Richard Richter is with us here. Michael Weiner, my brother, Dr. John Viviani. We're with Michael Elias. And, of course, that is a friend of the show, Nicholas Meyer from Star Trek. He was involved in quite a number of the movies and, of course, The Wrath of Khan. And seems to be that I hesitate to say friend. He's a friend of the show, but he seems to be a real friend of yours, Michael. Is that correct?
Absolutely. He's my oldest friend. I think he's my oldest friend in Hollywood. Met him when I first came here. He was just about to publish this novel, and we've stayed friends ever since.
How about that? That's amazing. We were working on it, and I think hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed sometime in the future. We'll have the both of you on. I'd love to talk to and pick the brain of two authors and two gentlemen who have done so much in Hollywood, and look back and try to learn some lessons from you. But that'll be for another day. I just want to finish up. I think you would just, and I cut you off, you were just describing a little bit about the next couple of projects. So if you want to just finish up either on the first book.
Oh, and then now I'm working on another thriller murder mystery set in Maui.
Yeah, you're going to have to visit Maui to do some research. That's going to be tough. Just for kicks, if they do this TV series, and it sounds like they are, and it's going to be produced for You Can Go Home Now, If they asked you to write an episode or two, do you think you would dive back in?
I don't know. It's maybe, but I'm happy to, as I said, leave it to, this may sound strange, the professionals, because the art of writing a episodic dramatic show is pretty special. I mean, these, and the people they have are great. So I'm happy. I'm a kind of a consultant, and they're really nice, and I'm happy to help them or give advice or whatever it is, or the fruits of my research. But I don't know if I would write one.
Sounds
I really don't know. It's premature. Let's get them on the air first.
It's true. We'll keep our eyes open and see if you could be a consultant. Everything old is new again in some way, shape, or form. In that, Dr. Richter has a question about which one?
Yeah, Michael, actually, the Frisco Kid that you wrote, I mean, I see you smiling. It put a big smile on my face, back in the day when it was out. And I just wanted to know, how you went from where you even came up with the idea for that, and, how that went from, your imagination and writing the screenplay into the big screen. And then did you have any interaction at all with two of my favorite actors from back then, which were Harrison Ford and Gene Wilder? I just loved his movies. He was amazing. And,
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Growing up, I didn't see Jews in movies. I certainly didn't see them in cowboy movies. And I love cowboy movies, and I love playing cowboys. So I said, so when I came to Hollywood, Shaw and I we used to talk about that. And we said, well, let's do some research. And it turned out there were Jews who were very influential and important in the Old West. There were Jewish gunfighters, there were Jewish sharpshooters, there was even a Jewish Indian chief, Solomon Bebo, who became the chief of the Acoma Pueblo in Taos, New Mexico. So there were Jewish gold miners, but I never saw them in movies. So he said, let's write a movie about a Jewish cowboy, or a Jew comes to the Old West. We said, okay, who's the top Jew? He said, well, he should be a rabbi. Okay. And we'll make a cowboy movie with a rabbi, kind of a cowboy movie. And so we had him traveling across the country with a bank robber who was Harrison Ford, and it was Gene Wilder. And, there's a lot of history to the movie and how it got made, but that was the impetus for it, to say, hey, how come we never see, Jews in cowboy movies? And they should have been. So it's the same thing where people say, how come, we don't see, and we do now, but we never saw, black kids never saw black guys in black cowboys, but there were. However, at the time, there was the Bronze Buckaroo with Herb Jeffries. You know about those?
No.
Oh yeah, there's a whole series of black cowboy movies starring Herb Jeffries, who was a singer. He was sort of like Frank Sinatra, but he was famous, and he played the Bronze Buckaroo, and there was a series of, half a dozen Westerns. Everybody in it was black. The hero walked into a saloon. It was all black guys playing cards, black singers, black bartender, whatever. There were black bad guys, black good guys, and like Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, in the middle of the movie, they sang songs. And this guy, Herb Jeffries, was that's a sidebar, but it's a really interesting thing. So that was the impetus for the Frisco Kid. It had a long and tortured history before it finally became a movie. Went through many actors, a few actors, directors. Mike Nichols was the original director. Jack Nicholson was the original cowboy bank robber, and Dustin Hoffman the original rabbi. But it all fell apart. And then I would say ended up, I don't mean pejoratively, we ended up with Harrison and Gene Wilder. And I'll tell you just one little anecdote. Originally, the cowboy was supposed to be played by John Wayne. He wanted to do it. He said, I want to be in that Jew movie. And the thing was, John Wayne had a price. It was $750,000. It's low by today's standards, but maybe then it was a lot of money. But his price was $750,000. That was it. And some schmuck at Warner Brothers Business Affairs offered him $600,000, and he said, "Forget it, never talk to me again." And he left. But we could have had John Wayne. I mean, I'm happy with Harrison; he was great. But that John Wayne wanted to do that movie.
Think about that. And so John Wayne was so principled, I guess you'd say. He didn't even want to come back and say, no, you know, don't even talk to me again.
Insulted. No, it was insulted.
You know, John Wayne, of course, he was the cowboy back in the day. But I've got to tell you, looking back at that movie, Harrison Ford was he was perfect for it.
Oh, yeah, because he was funny. I mean, John Wayne was never really funny. I mean, this guy he could, you know, Harrison could do comedy, he could do exasperation, he was terrific. I love Harrison. Great.
Would have been a great change of pace too to see. Talking about comedy, because we didn't really mention it. You kind of mentioned you have written for Pat Paulson, Bill Cosby, Mary Tyler Moore, All in the Family, the new Dick Van Dyke Show, Glenn Campbell. I'm going to play a smidge of one clip of The Odd Couple. We love The Odd Couple. We've got to talk about it. The episode that you wrote. So let's just play a smidge of a clip and dive into this in a minute here.
The operas in which the leading lady is named Leonora. Il Trovatore by Verdi. Il Trovatore by Verdi. La Forza del Destino, also by Verdi. Something else by Verdi. Name 3 operas in which the leading lady is named Leonora. Il Trovatore by Verdi. Il Trovatore by Verdi. La Forza del Destino, also by Verdi. Something else by Verdi. La Forza del Destino. La Forza del Destino.
Means the power of fate. In German, it's die Macht das Schicksal.
In German, it's die Macht das Schicksal. You don't want it in German. Okay, please, come on, I only have 3 seconds.
Fidelio by Beethoven.
Fidelio by Beethoven. You're kidding. Oh, boy, thanks. That's terrific. Felix, I just won a car.
Michael, that's the episode, of course, where they have a car and John Byner's in it, and there's all kinds of trouble parking the car and so forth, what they're going to do. Just wanted to dive in a little bit first, and I presume the answer to this is yes, but I'll have to dive in. Were you happy with the way that the two of them performed your words?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how could you improve? Like, they were terrific, weren't they?
Yeah. That's based on a true story where George Shapiro, who recently passed away, he was a manager and agent, and he parked his car. And, I mean, that was a story. And he went to get his car after work, and the car was gone. And he called the police and reported it. He rented a car, and then 2 days later he realized he had parked it somewhere else. And
I've done that.
So he was ashamed, embarrassed. So what he did was he parked the car in front of the Beverly Hills police station and left it there, and then waited. Like about a week later, they called. He said, "Mr. Shapiro, we found your car." He said, "Oh, that's great."
Give him some credit and get out of it gracefully, right?
That's how he sold that to Tony Randall, or I guess Gary Marshall, I think, was doing the show then.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's what it says with the paperwork. It was just, it's an amazing body of work, and with Michael Elias here and Everything Old is New Again, we'll be back one more section to dive in some more and just continue the fun here. And Everything Old is New Again.
Suddenly, Seymour is here to provide you sweet understanding.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
The ashtray and the paddle game, that's all I need. And this remote control. The ashtray and the paddle game and the remote control, that's all I need. And these matches. The ashtray and these matches and the remote control and the paddle ball. This lamp.
We're back on Everything Old is New Again, listening to the Jerk there a little bit. We're with Michael Elias, who was involved in the screenplay with Steve Martin, and we're here, of course, with Michael Weiner, who hasn't said anything yet. Michael, say something to us. Hello.
Hello. Oh, this other Michael.
Hey, I'm unmuted. So, Michael, I was curious. I saw that you have a very intense background in college. You were a philosophy major, mathematics. Did that background influence your successful career, or was it sort of just separate?
No, it was very influential. I went to this little college called St. John's College, where I ended up with major in philosophy and mathematics. So the mathematics got me my job as a math teacher in New York. That was great. And philosophy and reading and basically having a liberal arts education gave me what I really needed to be a writer. That was the most important thing. When I say, what's the education of a writer is to read as much as possible and discuss and think about what other writers have written, and I certainly got it in college.
How about that? Dr. Richter, a question about
The Jerk. Michael, we love the movie The Jerk, and my family, my kids to this day, it's one of those movies that you can rewatch. And the term, the joke in the house is always the new phone book is here, or I found my special purpose.
Special purpose.
I've got to ask you, at least the origin in your screenwriting of the new phone book is here and I found my special purpose. Where did you come up with that?
I don't know who came up with it. It was one of three people, or four, me, Carl, Steve. Yeah, one of us. But you raise an interesting, you mentioned something interesting, which really makes me feel good, which is people tell me, I watched that movie with my mother and I realized she had a sense of humor. And that's sweet about that. You watch it with your kids and you laugh at the same thing, even though it's a little off color, whatever it is. It's great. I really like to hear that. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's well worth it. Let's play one more clip here from Head of the Class, and I have a springboard off of this. We'll talk.
Suddenly like that?
Yeah, exactly like that.
Hey, Arvid, you're not bad. No, really. Mr. Moore, you should seriously consider making Arvid my understudy.
There we go. It's a little piece of an episode. There was a two-part episode, Little Shop of Horrors, was sort of played through that two-episode arc, if you will, of back ahead of the class. And also, it's interesting to me to know that you did also dive into a little bit of Grease and some other plays. And I guess a larger question is, with that show, you touched upon many different topics. You did some morality plays, and even in that, where the character that is overlooked becomes the star, so to speak, of a school play. Did you intend, or do you have anything in the back of your mind when you write some of these screenplays or episodes that you'd like to present ideas that would last, not just a joke, but maybe some thought that could last and maybe change someone's mind about things?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's, I believe that one of the things about entertainment, and it could also educate and have people struggle and deal with them. And you can't solve the world's problems, but you can show kids having ambition problems, and I think we try to do that on Head of the Class. The funniest one, not the funniest one we did was called the Shakespeare authorship question, which is who wrote Shakespeare. And there's a whole body of scholarship that says that Shakespeare wasn't written by Shakespeare. And we did a show about that where the teacher, Howard Esmond, says he believes that the Earl of Oxford wrote it. And the kids are like, how could that be? And they discussed that in a comedy way of who wrote Shakespeare. And we got more mail from that show than any other show we did. Because the Oxfordians, finally, they all got to say, finally, somebody on television said that, we're right. And, so that was good. And yeah, we did a show about a teacher who was, developing Alzheimer's. We did one show about a kid who brought a gun to school. We did a show on birth control. I don't know if you saw that one, where Arvid is trying to buy a condom. And he's in a drugstore, and he's really, frightened to buy a condom. And a woman comes up to him and says, "They're on me, and they better be on you." And and by the way, ABC refused. They said, "Well, you have to cut that line." We said, "Why?" He said, "You have to cut it. You can't cut it." We said, "No." And we had fights with the censors. Another good one was we got a picture of Malcolm X in the classroom. And it was next to the picture of Daily News, which was Ford. Remember that one? Ford to City, drop dead. Anyway, so we got a call from the censor at ABC. He says, "You have to take down the picture of Malcolm X." We said, "Why?" He said, "Well, it's too political. You can't." He said, and I said to the guy, "Okay, just write me a letter. Tell me to do it." Of course, I never got the letter, and Malcolm stayed up for the whole 5 years.
How about that? It's a good way to handle it. Quote here, and I'm going to see if we can dive into this for a moment, a friend of yours. But before I do, you did that episode about Little Shop of Horrors, and then a couple of years before, your friend Steve Martin was in Little Shop of Horrors. You come back to bookend, so to speak, there with a little bit of that. When you wrote the script, were you familiar with that, and did it influence you in any way?
Yeah, I mean, Little Shop. We decided we would do. I don't know if we did all 5, but I think we said, well, let's do a musical every year. I mean, we did Little Shop of Horrors. We did Grease. And I guess we did 3, and we did the Vietnam, the Hair. We did Hair.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, three musicals. That was a lot of fun. Great talent.
But it was great about that show. There was variety to it. You did that. There were other, as we talked about, other episodes that covered other topics and so forth. It wasn't the same situation every time, just kind of recycling and talk about the same old things.
We did 2 shows in Russia. We went to Moscow. We went to the Kennedy Space Center. We went, what else did we? Yeah, we did a lot of stuff, man.
A lot of fun. If you get a chance, it's on reruns. You get a chance to see it. If you haven't seen it, it's wonderful. Through the years, I have learned there's no harm in charging oneself up with delusions between moments of vapid inspiration. From Steve Martin. Does that speak to you in any way? Have you ever heard that quote before?
Could you say it again?
Sure I can. Through the years, I have learned there is no harm in charging oneself up with delusions between moments of vapid inspiration.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. You have to. I mean, there's 2 things that I always say drive people in Hollywood. One is money and the other is revenge. Because you have so much rejection in your life. And Steve certainly did. He bombed a lot, and there were people who wouldn't hire him, and so forth. So you want to get even, and show how I can do that. I can do that. It's kind of benign. I mean, when I say revenge, you're not getting, you're not hurting anybody, but that's how Hollywood is a town where Schadenfreude, where people are envious of your success. There's not a lot of people who actually. I mean, your friends. I knew a producer who used to read the Tuesday Variety box office, and if he didn't have a picture, he would say, "Look at this piece of crap. It got $40 million, and look at this piece of junk," because he was just jealous because his picture wasn't up there or wasn't included. So that was his motive force.
Well, also in the delusion, in some ways, to believe in yourself enough to keep on coming back to the drawing board after you get. Yeah,
you better, right? You better, because you can't. You need that. You need that to sit down and write. You need that to get up and perform, and you absolutely need that. Not too much, but you need a lot. You need it.
Sounds good. It's pretty much what we've got here in this room. Yeah. Michael, thank you very much for spending so much time with us here. Michael Elias, You Can Go Home Now is a book that, if you haven't read it yet, is a good one to get back to the drawing board. It's going to be a series soon. Read the original. You're going to love it. Michael, you've spent so much time with us. We've been so happy to do so, and thank you for spreading some stories and some smiles on our faces through the years.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, guys. This was fun, man. And I'm glad you I'm glad to do it, really, and I'll do it again. Especially get Nick Meyer on with me.
I will. I think it's going to be a great show to have the two of you at once. We will definitely.
You'll see competition.
Exactly. You'll see the sparks fly. All right, sounds good. If you happen to mention to him at a cocktail party, you help us along with that. Something that would be great too. But long story short, I'll reach out to both of you soon.
Okay, take care.
Thank you very much, and come on back next week to enjoy more pop culture entertainment right here and Everything Old is New Again.
You've been listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's pop culture entertainment talk show. Find us on the web at everythingoldisnewagain.biz. That's .biz.
See you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.